I'm really honored and excited to have here Luc Vincent. So Luc Vincent, I met 2 years ago. And 2 years ago, he already did a lot in his career. Luc is the founder of Google Street View. He is also now the VP of Engineering, the VP of Autonomous Technology at Lyft. He's building something amazing. And he joined only a bit more than a year ago. And since then, he went from a team of 2 engineers or so.
Roughly.
To 200 engineers.
200 plus, oui.
That is amazing. And he's going to tell us how he did it. And I have some hints. It's about the vision. We are going to talk about vision. We are going to talk why vision is so important. We are going to talk how he did it and how he's sharing it and all of this stuff. So a big round of applause for Luc Vincent. Thank you.
Thank you, Quang. Thank you.
Okay, Luc. So can you tell us in 1-2 minutes more about the background?
My background, the background of
your background, yes.
So background, I got a PhD in France in computer vision and came to the US about 25 years ago. And eventually made my way to Silicon Valley, where I joined Google in 2004 and was lucky enough to be able to bootstrap interesting project having to do with cars driving around taking pictures. And that project I turned into Street View, a very large-scale project over time, which was awesome. And I joined Lyft a year and a half ago.
Interestingly, this started out with the 20% free time you had at Google, isn't it?
It was very interesting, yeah. So when I came, on my very first day at Google, after a long sort of day of onboarding, I was pulled into a meeting to discuss some collaboration with Stanford that had to do with putting cameras on vehicles and driving around to collect pictures. I had really no idea why Google would want to do that, but that sounded like fun. And so, and the idea, in fact, came from Larry Page himself. He wanted to just go around and take lots of pictures. So I didn't really know why, but took it, and in my 20% time, as Quang said, turned this into, first of all, understood why it made sense, was able to sort of create some sort of vision around it, and then sort of made it happen, so it was really fun.
So 1 year and a half ago, you were still at Google, and you were leading 500 engineers.
Correct.
And you decided to join Lyft. Can you tell us why?
Well, a number of things. You know, I'd been at Google for a very long time, 12 plus years, and that, you know, I became antsy. I wanted to do something new, a bit different. Google was becoming a very large company. And so what happened is that I met people at Lyft, in particular the founders, and got, you know, really interested in both, you know, their vision for the company, as well as them personally. I love them as people. You know, I love their values, the way they build the Lyft. And then, of course, it was like the, you know, the track record of the company, the growth and the market they play in, and the opportunity to do something, you know, new for Lyft, which was to build a self-driving, you know, team and build this tech for Lyft. So that was just, you know, all things together. That was amazing. I decided to join.
And now you are hitting 200 engineers there. And I'm really wondering, like, what is the VP of 200 people is doing day to day? Can you tell me your day yesterday? What time did you get up?
Day to day. I mean, what?
What time did you get up?
I get up at
what did you do?
7, you know.
You wake up at 7. Then what did you do? How was your day?
You know, I take a shower, then I grab breakfast.
Okay.
You know, these kind of things. Yeah, and then, well, my day is typically a number of things having to do with, you know, meetings. So one-on-ones, team meetings. So there's often tech reviews. So, you know, part of my role is to make sure we build the right thing, as well as sort of that we have good communication across teams. So these reviews serve both to, you know, review the work, but also to make sure that engineers talk to each other, right, across the team. So there was one yesterday as well. I had probably 2 candidates that I interviewed, one by phone and one in person. And then probably a meeting with my boss, the CEO, Logan Green. So that's going to serve my day, mostly talking to people, meeting.
Talking.
Right, lots of talking.
Lots of talking.
Indeed.
So managing your team, hiring people, and managing up.
Right, so managing up, managing down, and sort of also growing the team, right? Making sure we have the team and the resources we need to deliver on a very, very broad mission.
Cool, okay. So let's talk about vision, okay. So I want to ask you, what is the vision of the department that you are leading today, and why it is important to build, articulate, and share. So what is the vision of your department today?
Well, I would say, broadly speaking, at Lyft, our vision is to be the first transportation as a service company to have a very large number of self-driving cars on our network. And by very large, we define this as typically 100,000. So that's our vision. You know, that is also a very broad sort of mission statement for everything we do. It's a way to align, you know, it's a way to help us, you know, decide day to day what's important. And the way we decide that, we use this kind of big goal as a kind of a yardstick, as a way to put things in perspective and context. So it gives us a way to, you know, decide on priorities as well as sort of attract people, because that mission is, you know, very ambitious and tends to attract the best talent.
Transportation as a service is Lyft vision, right? And your department.
Well, that's what we are today. We are what's called a task company, right?
A task company.
Yeah, it's like a...
But you have a dedicated one for your department, isn't it? The autonomous technology. So
specifically what we're doing is that the way I describe it often is that we are doing what Netflix did about 20 years ago. You know, at the time they were shipping, you know, DVDs to people, right? That was great, a good business, but they figured that, you know, in 10 years we won't really be doing this. We need to, you know, start, you know, building a team to do streaming. So they set a separate team to build essentially the future of Netflix, which is what Netflix is today. And so that's sort of what my team is doing. We believe that in the long run, we can't just, you know, operate a service based purely on drivers. You know, the world is moving to autonomous, you know, systems, autonomous cars, and we need to play there. And so therefore we set a separate team to do this, and that's what I'm doing right now.
Okay. And people, so why is it important to articulate this and to build this? First question, how did you build this originally? So it was a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
The founders had it, and then you just appropriate yourself?
You know, a vision always evolves. And so, you know, just like going back to my Google days, you know, Larry Page had this idea of taking pictures, you know, and maybe he wanted, broadly speaking, to not just bring the web to people, he wanted to bring the world to people, right? That was like the broad vision he had. And so, you know, I had to take this, essentially this idea and turn it into kind of a mission that evolved over time. But essentially was to capture the world at street level and then bring it to people. At Lyft, you know, there was this, you know, idea, this notion that self-driving was going to be transformative to our business, and we need to play there. But exactly how to do it, exactly what to aim for, exactly sort of how to organize to make it happen, that was still, you know, up for grab. And so part of my role was to get a perspective on this, talk to a whole bunch of stakeholders in the company, the different functions, the different, you know, existing employees, of course my peers, Logan, the founders, and try to come up with like a story that we could tell. And then you test this by talking about it. So you talk about it at your all hands, your, you know, one-on-ones, and eventually the messaging converge, and you come up with like a kind of a story, a mission that you can tell over and over, and that's what I think a mission is.
Were you convinced originally, or did you have to convince yourself? Did you have to talk with people that it's a real thing?
I'd say I was convinced that this was important. I was convinced that it was going to be interesting work. I was not yet convinced that we were going to be able to execute and that we had what it took to be different there. And now I'm fully convinced, after having worked on this for some time, that we're onto something big.
Okay, but what is a vision? Is it a slide deck? Is it some bullet points? Is it some, like, what is it? Is it a 5-minute pitch? Is it all of this?
All of the above, right? I think
all of this.
I think you know, in my view, it has to be. You have to be able to distill it for the audience. You know, so you have to be able to communicate this by email to somebody. You have to be able to talk about it at an event. You have to be able to talk to a candidate about it. You have to be able to show it in a presentation. So you adapt. You have your, you know, elevator pitch, but then you need to be able to drill down, right?
So you have a folder in your Google Drive, then vision, and then you have a pitch, 5 minutes for the press. I have a talk for...
No, I think we have a bunch of slide decks. You know, and then the slide decks evolve over time because, you know, the mission is not really static. So I think it's meant to capture something that will keep you busy for years, but, you know, certainly over 5 to 10 years, things will evolve. And so that mission itself will probably...
So you need to adapt your pitch with the person you are talking to. Is it press, candidates, etc.
Very much so.
And now let's talk about sharing it. Okay, what have you seen is working really, really well for sharing the vision? Is it an event like this one? Is it on the press? Is it writing blog posts? I saw your blog post. It was great.
Right.
It was 1.5 years ago. It was the only one I think I saw.
Yes, I think it was about a year ago, yes.
A year ago.
The time we talked about this. Well, I think, first of all, internally, you need to make sure that you're all aligned on the vision, right? That's so very, very critical. For your team to function, people need to understand, to have the right context for their work, right? So I think they need to hear from you, your vision for, again, for the team and the project, and need to hear it more than once. Because, you hear it once, you forget. You hear it over and over. So at every, all hand or every big team event, we start with at least one slide to remind people why we're here, what the team is all about. So we do this. And then, there are other ways to communicate this, this through making it we have an OKR process where we set every quarter, objectives and key results. And again, this vision provides context for the OKRs that we set on a quarterly or yearly basis. So it's something that you sort of essentially lives with you all the time and give you context for your work.
Okay, that's great. Just a reminder, in 8 minutes, I'm going to take questions from the audience. So use Slido, so you can use it now, and then we're going to vote for questions. So to share it, you need to tell it over and over.
Over communicate, yes.
Okay, and why is it important?
Well,
and is it you think the most important thing that help you go from 2 to 200 engineers in 1 year?
Not only that, I would say, people in the Valley in particular are lucky to have options. When you go after the great people, they could work anywhere.
Yes.
So the question you have to convince them, why would you come work at Lyft and at level 5? And typically it comes down to, of course, there's the comp aspect, but there's also where they're going to work, how their commute is going to look like, who are they going to work with, what is their career going to look like there, what are they going to work on, and then, do they believe in the mission? Do they believe in that they will have actually an impact, not just on the company, but on the world potentially? And are they big enough believer that they believe that the company will continue to grow and succeed, right? That's what you need to convince people about. And so I think one of the pillars of this is kind of the vision, the mission, because people can also we compete with companies like Google, Facebook, all the big names in the Valley, and so we have to be different. We have to sell a story that resonates with candidates. So that's why it is super important.
So have you seen that the vision and the mission is what has been working the most here to convince the best candidates?
I think we attract candidates that really believe in what we're trying to do, which is to Lyft as a whole is trying to sort of be the best way for people to go from A to B. So we want to transform people's lives with the best transportation, and what the level 5 group, the autonomous team, does fit in this mission very well. On top of that, it is kind of a super challenging technical work that is probably one of the most interesting challenges at the moment because of the rise of AI and machine learning. So it's an amazing area of work. It's a great umbrella company to work, to work as part of, and also it is a team mission that resonates with people. All this together, I think, has made it possible to hire this kind of talent very quickly.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm a candidate. Why should I work with you, Luc?
Well,
convince me.
Convince you? Okay.
Yes.
Well, you should come, right, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, I know this guy. He's awesome, so I'd hire him any time. But he's got a
The 14 people
going.
in my company would not be happy.
That's right. No, so seriously. So I think, first of all, once I'm convinced that you would bring value, I'm going to see your technical talent and other things that you can do for us, I would sort of, again, sell you on what you, first of all, the role that you'd be taking for, and we would have to have a dialogue on this, right? What would you be doing? Does it fit? Is there a good role for you to grow and succeed, right? But also, I would convince you, by showing you, first of all, numbers. So I'll show you, Lyft, as a whole, the Lyft growth over the past 2 years. That to me tells a lot, a big chunk of the story. The company has grown 170% last year.
170?
Yes, 170. We have been gaining market share over our competition, significantly over the past year. So as a business, we're doing well, and this to me proves that we are riding a trend, right? And that trend, if you continue to execute, we will, all do very well in the long run. So I think that's one point, that you're joining a growth story. People want that. If you join a growth story, you will have many opportunities, right, going forward. I would say it's a key point. The other one is just the actual nature of the work and the way you can, transform the way people move. Right now, the main issue we have, when you use a car, you use your car typically by yourself. You use it 1 hour a day. The rest of the time, you sit in your driveway. You sit in traffic. So it's the car is an expensive, underutilized asset that everybody hates. But the car is also required by people. Sometimes you need your car to go to your job. So that's what we're trying to solve here. We're trying to solve transportation, and in the process, reclaim our cities. Not need parking. So we're moving from transportation of today, which is by personal car, to the future where people really won't own a car and will instead use a service. And this service will be primarily based on self-driving vehicles. That is the pitch. So
I love it.
Good. Thank you.
So I think it is super sexy as a vision, okay? But plenty of companies don't have this. They are working in an unsexy industry, unsexy sector. Like, what's your advice to them to try to be compelling and try to attract candidates, although they are working in an unsexy industry?
Well, so I think first
like
of all,
expense reports.
Yeah. That's so. First of all, it's more difficult for sure. Again, people have a choice, but people are all different. So what matters to one candidate may be different than what matters to another candidate. So for example, somebody might value the stability of a larger company. Somebody might be excited about an early stage startup because of the upside and be willing to tolerate the risk. So these elements also play a role in attracting the people you want. So again, stability, size of the company, type of team you'll be joining. Sort of, again, the commute aspect makes a difference in people's lives, right? So all these are taken into consideration. And then, of course, the mission is part of that package. But again, to some people, maybe it's less important than to others. So I would sort of, if the mission is unsexy, first I would try to make it as sexy as possible by showing, again, the numbers, the metrics, trying to understand the impact on customers or partners. Try to make it all about impact, really.
Okay, so make it sexy as much as possible, and then identify other aspects that candidates might be interested in, and then double down and focus on them.
Correct.
Okay. If I ask the 200 engineers in the organization, what is the mission of your department, they would all say the same thing.
Well, we're growing so fast. We have as of last week, probably 15 new people that just joined, so they don't know yet, probably.
Of course.
So,
so they say 90% of them.
Yeah,
I think they would say they have the same version.
Would at least be aware what we do, why we're here, and certainly would have been sold on this mission to, before they actually joined us. So I would hope so, at a very high level. Yeah.
And do you have any part of your vision that is confidential, and you say only to them and not to the press? So do you have different versions?
Typically not. No, we
so
try to be very open, right? Obviously, there's a bunch of things we do that we don't talk about, but the mission is something that we need to communicate broadly to partners, to candidates, to everybody. So we talk about it very openly.
Cool. Yeah. And so the vision is like something really far. How do you make sure you are progressing towards this? How do you make sure that we are going towards the right direction at the right pace?
So that's where I think your metrics come in. I think you first of all, you need to have milestones and metrics, right? What John Doerr said famously is that what gets measured gets improved. It's also a motto at Google. And so it's something you need to articulate. You need to understand what metrics matters to you, what metrics you need to move to get to this grand vision that you painted, right? So metrics matter, and then based on these metrics, you come up with OKRs, or objectives and key results, on a yearly basis, on a quarterly basis, and you try to make sure that you hit these milestones. So OKRs are about moving these metrics as well as achieving technical milestones.
So what's the metrics that you care about?
So at Lyft as a whole has a number of metrics. The top level ones are about growth of the business, number of rides per day. Then there's a bunch of metrics around utilization of the platform. So how often is a driver with a passenger, which means that they make money. There's metrics on quality of the service. What is the ETA? Between the time you request a vehicle and the time you get your vehicle to pick you up, right? So the Level 5 team at the moment, the metrics are about number of miles driven in autonomous mode.
Number of miles driven.
So we're starting to drive. The team is based in Palo Alto. We're starting to drive.
For test drive or for real drive?
So
for real passengers.
So we have two types of drives. One drive is data collection there, and just collecting data is important because for training and for mapping. So number of miles driven there. We have targets in the thousands, and then number of miles driven in autonomous mode, right? Which we started to do, and there we track not just number of miles driven, but where and the quality of the ride. Typically, you end up you have safety drivers, and what you track is a number of disengagement, number of time the driver to take over because the cars know what to do. So these are the kind of metrics we track.
Okay, cool. I still have 8 minutes for questions, so I have a few of them there. What was the biggest inflection point in your career?
It was, to be honest, it was probably being able to take Street View from nothing into a product that was successful. And I think the success came when we launched. So this was like really Google was this crazy place at the time in 2004, 2005 when everything was possible. And so I was able to, sort of start Street View and from an idea and have enough, sort of support from my manager to try to do something with it, but nobody knew it was going to succeed, right? So in May 2007, I believe, we launched it as part of Google Maps, and was going to be the reaction. And then the metrics went through the roof. Number of users who played with it and went to see their house and navigated through the streets of SF, and had fun with it was phenomenal. And so there we knew, whoa, we went to something, and now let's work on making it big. And to me, that was like a big inflection point. That success of the launch led to growth of the product and of the team in my scope and my responsibilities. So that was the biggest inflection point, I think.
And another inflection point is when you left them, right? When you left Google, right?
Probably, and joining Lyft now is another new inflection point because the mission is so broad and so sort of can change the life of so many people. So.
And because you didn't see as much energy at Google at the end than when you joined in 2004?
Yeah, I mean, Google, is a different company today than it was in 2004, right? So in fact, the reason I was also attracted to Lyft, I should have mentioned, is that I joined Lyft a year and a half ago when it was about the same size as Google when I joined in 2004, and growing probably even faster. And that energy, that sense of limitless opportunity is definitely something I was missing at Google in the last few years I was there. And that's amazing to be part of these kind of stories.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had the same question, so it's a good one. Can a vision be scoped down to a team, or does it have to be a company-wide statement?
So I think that's a great question. I think vision by definition had to encompass like a large body of work, right? Just not one small team on one individual's work. So the way I think about it at Lyft, we've got this overall, mission to, and vision that will be the company that will, give you the best transportation from A to B, and improve your life this way. And I think the vision of the self-driving team, the autonomous team, has to be aligned with this. It has to be a part of this. So, but it can also be, slightly, there can be tweaks to this. Put it this way, but Bob, to answer your question, it has to encompass the work of a large chunk of people, I think.
This one is about career.
Mm-hmm.
So, how did you make the choice between IC and manager? When was it?
Well, I mean, I started my career as an IC, and at one point you grow in scope. You're tech lead. You do a lot, and you realize that you sort of can't do everything by yourself. And so there's always this transition where you crave to continue to grow, In my case, I wasn't probably, maybe I got to a point where I could contribute more by organizing a small team than by sort of doing the work myself. You hit your limits in terms of like what you can do by yourself. I was maybe not good enough. I mean, some people can, advance, technically to amazing, level and scope. In my case, I also enjoyed really the aspect of sort of leading a small team and growing it. So I made the switch, and then I learned and made mistakes along the way. But it's been really fun.
It has not been really a hard decision for you.
It was not a hard decision for me. It was kind of natural evolution, absolutely. And that was like 20 years ago that I took that change, made that change.
20?
20, roughly.
Okay. I was 9-year-old.
Where's my cane? Sorry.
France was winning the World Cup at this point.
Yeah.
What would you suggest to yourself to your younger self? What advice?
Great question. Next question. I'm not sure.
Okay.
What did I suggest? I don't know.
How do you work with the product team to translate the vision into engineering tasks? So what are the roles of the product and engineering to execute on the vision? So how do you...
Yeah.
I think this is the topic of the next panel, so
Right.
it's going to be a good
That's
transition.
a great question. I mean, to me, product and engineering are partners, right? You can't, what I would say, the worst thing you can do is have product, lead full strategy by themselves in their quote-unquote ivory tower without sort of grounding their work, their strategy work on what engineering can deliver. And so it has to be a partnership, right? And also, engineers don't really, want to be told what to do. They want to be part of coming up with what to do. So I think to me, this is like a partnership where indeed product probably leads more on the strategic sort of initiative and coming up with the objectives and the broad vision. But it has to be done in partnership closely with engineering and engineering leaders. Absolutely.
So, and again, it's going to be the topic of one of the panel we have this afternoon.
Excellent.
So the person who asked this question should stay.
Good.
This is a candid question, and maybe we should have started with this. So difference between mission and vision?
Yeah, people sometimes conflate both.
Yes.
And I sometimes do myself.
Okay.
So, I would say, well, I'm not sure. I should be honest with you. It's like it's about the same thing. You tell me if you think it's different. I've heard, arguments on both sides. So I tend to conflate both of them, to be clear.
Yes. Maybe talking about Plato about this.
Yeah.
Our mission would be to help engineering and product people to be better at soft skills and build better teams. This is the mission. And maybe the vision would be to how do we go there? So we go there by building, by creating connections, so people can be mentor and mentee, or we go there by building the Stack Overflow or of this, so a massive community of people helping each other. Maybe it's more about the how, and where we want to go is the mission. So the mission is to why we are doing this, and how could be, I'm not sure, but this is
that's a good way to think about it. Yeah.
One of my answer to this. Maybe the last one, just to get back to Lyft. And what part of autonomous does Lyft want to be the best at?
Yeah, great question. I think so. Lyft wants to be the best at operating the cars at scale. So in other words, we realize that we're not, we have only started recently to work on the self-driving tech itself. However, we have this big advantage that we have this large network already today, of drivers and of passengers using Lyft. Therefore, if we have access to, cars that either we build ourselves or through partners, self-driving cars, we believe we'll be the best at putting these cars to work and having them used 80%, 90% of the time, on our network. So that's kind of the value add. The value add is like, is the service itself. It's the core asset of Lyft, and that's what we're trying to leverage in our self-driving work.
That is great. So usually, when I hear you, a good way to see if you succeed at pitching the vision and the mission is ask, I now, that needs to exist. I want what you are building on and what you are working on, that needs to exist. And as soon as I'm saying that to myself, you succeeded on how to convey and pitching the mission. So, good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Thank you very much, Quang. Thank all of you.